And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Mail-in voting, it's back. I think it's worth talking about. I think we could debate it a little bit. Herschel Walker, you have more to say than I do, but I'm sure I will find my footing to talk about Herschel Walker. And then chess cheat master. I don't know which one he is. We're going to debate whether or not you believe it. Mark, do you think someone could cheat in chess?
Apparently 100 times.
Mark, how are you feeling today?
I'm good. The sun is shining.
I was hoping you would say awesome again. I was waiting to see how many days in a row you would say awesome.
I blew it. You threw it. You set it right up there for me. No, I was just thinking how literally 10 seconds before we start, you're like, hey, did you see this story?
Yeah.
So I didn't even I opened a new browser and I didn't even get to type anything yet. And all of a sudden you started drum rolling and I feel like I was just like set up.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, you can still read it after the show. It's very interesting. Honestly, it might be worth talking about tomorrow, depending on what you think. I wanted to start today, open conversation about mail-in voting. It's back for the midterms. Obviously, it's a huge debate. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding party to party. I think there's misunderstanding county to county. There's misunderstanding state to state. There's misunderstanding. A lot of discussion on the merit of mail-in voting and where it stands. You and I have never actually talked about this before, like the merit or whether or not we agree with or believe in mail-in voting.
Do they have a post office in Blossburg?
They do, yeah. Is that a real question? Because even like the smallest places, you know that there's places with like 100 people that have post offices. Like that's almost, you're more likely to have a post office than you are to have like a police station.
Yeah, it was one of the jokes that Montoursville people always used about Loyal Sock when we were in the arguments of who's better. We're like, at least we have a post office.
That makes sense. Who like all the fighting aside, who owns the Green Bridge?
We do.
Is it Montoursville?
Well, yeah, because Montoursville spreads to both sides.
So you think the bridge is Montoursville's bridge. So basically, you feel like you are defending the bridge, and whereas Loyal Sox feel like they're trying to conquer it. Interesting.
Yeah. It is. Didn't you tell me something like Loyal Sock Township? There's something about the school district or whatever that it's the only town. There's only a couple schools in the state that are a town.
So my understanding, I believe there was only two. Now there's a debate that there might be three, but there were only two schools in the entire state where the actual school border is a township.
It's just the township.
And the other one is, most people know the other one. It's Camp Hill is the other one that is like an actual township borderline. Yeah. Okay. So that's Loyal Sock and Camp Hill. But mail-in voting, I didn't know. I've never heard your opinion of it. Do you have an opinion on mail-in voting?
I don't know if I have an opinion on mail-in voting per se. I know last time it was certainly, how do we say, less than perfect. Mm-hmm. I know of people who, I think, you talk to anyone, they know of someone who got a ballot in a state that they haven't lived in for years.
Right.
Or they got a state that maybe they have a timeshare in or something. It was, again, it was far from perfect. I think when you look at the voting system now, I don't think anyone disagrees, no matter what party you're in, that only people who are allowed to vote should vote. Like, you need to be an American citizen. You need to be the right will say that the left just wants anybody to vote, whether they're a citizen or not. The left will say that the right is just trying to make it harder and harder and harder for American citizens to vote. So I've never understood why it is just a day. I understand back in colonial times where there was only 50 people in a town that it made it easy.
Right.
It is ridiculous that people have to stand in line for 8 hours to vote. Why it's not a week? The reason it's a day is historical purposes and because it's a wonderful made-for-TV event.
Okay.
But there's no reason why you shouldn't have election week. You could have election month. You should be able to spread it out. People shouldn't have to take a day off of work to go vote. Now they're like, well, it's a holiday. Well, depending on where you work, if you're a waitress, a bartender, a short order cook, Restaurants aren't closed on election day. There's lots of places that aren't closed. Retail stores aren't closed on election day. So both parties should make it conducive for everyone eligible to vote. And in theory, mail-in voting is good.
Yes.
As long as they know what the hell they're doing.
So maybe this is a good way to do this. I'm going to throw you some things that I dislike about mail-in voting.
Okay.
And you can basically you can tell me I'm an idiot. You can tell me, sure. But here's some of the things that I have. And I didn't write these down. So here's some of the things off the top of my head. When you take like your SATs, and for some reason, I can't get past this. When you take your SATs, like you've heard the running gag, like if you spell your name wrong, like it's X amount of points off of your SAT. No one sends your SAT back and says, spell your name right? There's a lot of places in life where if you spell your name wrong, you're docked or it doesn't work or it's deducted. There's a lot of places in life where if you don't date something correctly, it's docked, like you get fined, like whatever it may be. Same thing like sending it in these you're supposed to send it in a specific envelope, right? Like the secrecy envelope. Same thing, if you send it in the wrong envelope, they send it back and they give you the opportunity to send it back in the secrecy envelope. I don't understand. I think voting is super important. I wish we had more of a system like some countries overseas where like it's almost a responsibility. Like they mandate you to vote, like you must vote, right? Mickey Mouse, but like you are voting. I wish we had more of a system like that. However, I hate like the sympathy system that we have set up for mail-in voting, where essentially it's like there's only 3 or 4 things you have to do correctly. But if you don't do them correctly, we will bend over backwards to make sure that you have the opportunity to do it correctly. And we almost don't do that in any other function of society. Like only in mail-in voting can you functionally not spell your name correctly. And there's not like you can't do that on a test in school. Like there are teachers that will not let you like rewrite your name on a test or they'll dock you 5 points. Like I just don't understand that. I don't understand the forgiveness.
If you spell your name wrong on a test,
yes,
you didn't get 5 points to get docked.
I understand.
Well, unless it's multiple choice, then you're true and false.
But that was a real thing with the SAT. Now, I took the SAT a long time ago, so now maybe they have shifted that. But wasn't it at one point, I think it was like 200 points or something if you spelled your name wrong on
that
the
was
SATs?
The legend. Well, the legend I knew is you got 400 points just for spelling your name.
Okay. So tell me I'm wrong. Like, tell me like I'm just being curmudgeon-y, like conservative, that like there's so much sympathy for making sure that like the rules are simple. If you can't make it in or you don't feel like going in, I get it. But then like if all you have to do is date it, spell your name and put it in the right envelope, like I don't know. Like I just don't understand why now it's someone else's responsibility to do these things.
And from someone who didn't mail and vote, I don't know if it is simple. Because you get all these forms and things and it's like, oh, Schedule B and Schedule. I haven't read the instructions. Mm-hmm. I very rarely get a governmental document where the instructions are simple.
Okay. Do you think they're simple?
Do I think what are simple?
Do you think it's complicated?
I've never looked at it.
Okay. If you had to guess, if you had to guess, do you think it's complicated?
No, it should not be.
Okay.
But there's lots of things in life that shouldn't be complicated.
I agree with that.
The issue with mail-in voting, which everyone would say, is you don't know who actually voted. Mm-hmm. It can get mailed to your grandmother's house. Mm-hmm. You can take it as someone else and just vote for you.
Right.
Not vote for you, but vote your way. You can have a 14-year-old fill it out for grandma. You can have, tell them we must have never got one.
Okay.
Who freaking knows? So though there is some aspect to that.
Okay. This is my other one. There are state voted issues, right? State voted seats that people will mail in vote, but counties have there's different systems for your mail in vote depending on what county you live in. Some counties you can, some counties you can't. Some counties it's this day, some counties it's that. I struggle wrapping my head around the idea that one county is allowed to procure votes in a system that another county isn't, that are voting towards the same thing.
It shouldn't be. I agree with you.
And that aspect drives me nuts. I would almost prefer everybody in the state could mail in vote than instead of like picking these pockets and everybody having a different set of guidelines of how we are going to do this.
Yes. It's just the aspect of we know better.
Yes.
And I don't care what everyone else does, our way's better.
So here's the weird part for me. I don't think my issue is necessarily with mail-in voting per se. Like I think like we've almost created a system where you could argue it might be easier to mail in vote than go stand in line for 8 hours at some of these places. However, the system behind it, like in 2022, that we are talking about envelopes and like signatures and handwritten dates, it is mind-blowing to me that that is the system in which we have set up and that there is nothing better that we can do. There's just no probable way that we could solve this with like, I don't know, a site, an app, a something. I don't know people showing up at your door and they can only vote on your device by like a registered person. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, even at the census, we have people that get paid, they go door to door, like they collect the data. Like, I can't imagine that we couldn't have elected officials or registered people that go around and collect this data for people instead of making them fill out an envelope that they have to send in. It's just bonkers to me. So I don't have so much an issue with the fact that we do mail-in voting. The structure around it drives me insane.
I'm with you.
And I have
to just to play off where I said, you could take grandma's vote and fill it in and mail it in. You can also drive grandma to the polls.
Sure.
And say, grandma, vote for this guy and vote for this guy. And she's like, all right. So it's not like people aren't influenced other ways, but at least that's more legitimate. Yes.
But I agree with you. I think one of the things that bothers me most about the Republican Party being a Republican is I think we should be trying to celebrate the day. And I think we have, especially in the last 4 to 8 years, we have almost made Election Day like this thing that you have to look over and you have to you got to watch for people. And that frustrates me because I do think, like you hinted, like it almost should be a national holiday. Like it almost should be a day off where everybody has the chance to freely vote in the morning or in the middle of the day or the evening. So I don't know. Last question about this. I trying to think how I want to say this. I think Joe Biden is the president. I think Joe Biden won the election. I think some of the things that happened throughout COVID and what some states did to bend what was allowed and what was not allowed, I don't think it swayed the election, but I can see why people got upset. I can understand.
Absolutely.
I can understand how it opened the door.
Absolutely.
Here's what I would say though to anybody who just dismisses the idea that people would try to cheat in an election. You and I just talked about a phishing scandal. We're about to talk about a chess master scandal. We have had people cheat at the highest levels of everything. Do you think it's fair when people on the left just immediately dismiss any talk, the idea that an election could possibly be stolen or that people wouldn't even try it? To me,
because in 2016 they said the Russians stole it for Trump.
Yes, I just can't wrap my head around now that there is a faction of people that if you even mention, listen, I thought some of the rules were kind of corny in 2020 because we bent them a little bit. And you even say stuff like that. And some liberals will look at you sideways, oh, you're one of those people. It's no, but I look around society, people try to cheat and steal everything. Why do you honestly believe that somebody wouldn't try to get, you don't think someone would try to get an extra vote in for the president, to decide the free leader of the world? I don't know. So I wish we were at a place where we could talk about some of this stuff and people didn't look at you like you were crazy for even bringing it up or mentioning to have the conversation.
You can, depending on what circles you're in.
Yes.
There are some places you can't.
No,
you will be in grave danger.
To bring up mail-in voting in some circles is you're one of those people that thinks people actually try to send into bed. And it's listen, the idea that nobody tried to figure out a way to send, I find it hard to believe. So I think you can believe that the process was just. I think you can believe that Joe Biden is the president. But I think this dismissiveness against people that would question whether or not people might try to cheat in an election is just on both sides. The idea that people on both sides aren't constantly trying to figure out a leg up, how to get the extra vote, how to get more people there, how to get the second ballot in. I just find that crazy that we can't even talk about it.
Do you know who talked about our fishing cheating scandal and our chess cheating scandal?
Who did?
Scott Van Pelt.
Really? What did he
It
say?
was SportsCenter last night.
What did he have to say about it?
He showed the clips of, and I don't know if you've seen it. We talked at length about the fishing scandal. The guy just cutting them open, pulling weights out.
Yeah.
He was just, it was funny.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'd never seen the video of it.
That was your first time seeing
It's
it.
the first time I saw it that clear. Like, he wasn't well, the fish is only, so big.
Sure.
But he just cut it. He just reached in. There's one. There's another one. And then he showed the kid, the chess kid.
Yeah.
So it was on Scott Van Pelt Sports Center. It probably had a 3-minute segment last night.
That would have been decent. Heather says some states allow you to vote early and in person. PA hasn't caught up yet. Very true.
There are lots of states that allow you to vote early. And I hear just people say it's election day. It's not. Why is it election day? Like, for something this important, it shouldn't just be election. Someone shouldn't not get to vote because they're deathly ill that day.
Sure.
And we also don't want someone to go stand in line at the polls if they're deathly ill that day.
Sure.
So, like, the whole election day, the more it's gone on, it's a made-for-TV event. That's what it is.
Sure. No, I don't disagree with that at all. My thing would be, if you're going to have a day, then make it a day. It's a national holiday. People, you're not allowed to work. Like, everyone, your only job today is to vote.
But we don't want gas stations not open. We don't want grocery stores
I
not
understand
open.
that.
We don't want restaurants.
But that's the cost of having a day, right? Like, I guess that's what I'm saying, is like, if you're going to make it a
one
day,
or the other. Yes. If it's going to be one day, then everything should.
Yeah, like, if we're going to make it a day, then make it a day.
Would the midday show be shut down?
It possibly. You know what probably wouldn't is Weis Markets, because you can always depend on them.
Always depend on Weis Markets.
Yeah. Make sure you get their grocery rewards, gas rewards, Weis Markets. You're there every day. We know this.
I did not. I drove past one in Lewisburg this morning because I had a meeting in Lewisburg. So I have not been in one yet today, but I did drive past one that I don't usually drive past.
Okay. Next time I'm going to ask you what your most recent purchase was. Not today, but the next time I'm going to ask you. Remember what it was.
Okay.
Remember what it was. Herschel Walker, you wanted to talk about this. Not that I don't want to talk about it. I'll start off saying this, and hopefully we can build up from it, so I don't have to like downplay the segment later on. I don't find Herschel Walker to be a interesting person. I personally think I think he's a party person. I think he's somebody who people know because he scored touchdowns, and that has put him at a place where he is probably not ready, incapable, and probably should not be at. And so for me personally, like, I don't find him very interesting. The things that come out of his mouth, I don't find them proven. I don't find them believable. I don't find them even like thought-provoking. I think there are people in politics that say things I don't agree with, like AOC, for example. AOC will say things that I'm just like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because I don't agree. But the difference is, I know she's thought about it. Like, she has put time, like, this is a real belief she has. Right. And so in turn, I'm kind of like thought-provoking, like, oh, wow, like, why does she think this? Like, how did she get there? I don't think that at all of Herschel Walker. And so I am curious to see how you interest me in a conversation about Herschel Walker.
Well, I just wonder, when you read about the past of held a gun to his ex-wife's head, which he doesn't deny.
Okay.
He says he was struggling with mental illness at the time.
Okay.
Which is possible. His son, who has come out, who has blasted him recently.
I saw that.
His son is a conservative influencer.
Okay.
His son is not like fighting against the party. He's in the party.
Right.
He's active in the party. He's just saying, Dad, you're full of crap. So when you look at all this, is he maybe just the latest example or whatever, but that politics has totally sold its soul? There was I can't remember who it was, but a conservative talk show host who said, I don't care if he aborted endangered baby eagles. I just want to win the Senate. And have we, is this just the latest example how America has lost its soul, that we will vote for this guy regardless of anything of his, whether he's dishonest, whether he's immoral, whatever, we'll vote for him as long as when he is in office, he votes the way I want. And if that's the case, then, I mean, I think we believe that it's been that way.
Sure.
But this is kind of the most blatant example.
Here, like, this would be my only pushback. I think that whether it's like Herschel Walker, Tommy Tuberville was the coach at Auburn. He is now, I forget his position, but he was elected recently by the state. Even like you look at someone like Donald Trump. I always feel like on the right, there's this idea that the other side just believes the right has no morals and they'll just put anybody in front because they just want to make sure that they control the Senate. And I'm sure there's a part of that. Like I'm not saying that like they are oblivious to that or we are oblivious to that. But what's funny is like when the left does it, nobody says anything. Like AOC was not qualified. AOC was not somebody who had like a political background. She was somebody who kind of like rose up and she was like a bartender, waitress who wanted to make a difference and make a change. And people voted her in. And now she's kind of elevated to a place where most people on the right don't really feel like she belongs there. However, when like a Tommy Tuberville or like a Herschel Walker or Donald Trump, who has no experience in politics, right, has no reason to be there, but the right looks and says like anybody but another politician, and then they rise up through the ranks like a Mastriano, the left looks and says like, boy, all they care about is party affiliation. But I do think a part of it is like, I think a lot of the right gets to a point where they don't want to vote for the status quo of a politician anymore. That's what Trump represented when he ran for president.
Agreed.
That's what Herschel Walker represents. That's what Tommy Tuberville represents. So I think what you said at the beginning is like 33% true. Yes, like without a doubt, there are people that are going to vote party affiliation to make sure that they control the House or the Senate. But the 66% that the other side always forgets is like you had candidates that rose out of nowhere either. And part of it was you didn't want to vote for the same old politician. You just happen to have that person and we just happen to have this person. But they're both rising because people are sick of voting for the same old status quo with someone with their tie and that isn't really doing what they need to do.
I get that.
Okay.
But when you're voting for it, I don't, Herschel Walker ain't making news now because he's not a former politician. Mm-hmm. He's not making news now because he's unqualified. Mm-hmm. He's making news because he's anti-abortion and this woman's come out and said, I had an abortion. Mm-hmm. Last night, what Herschel Walker denied knowing her when she said he had an abortion.
But that wasn't your question to me.
No, I get it.
Okay.
But
because by the way, everything you just said, I said at the beginning, like I think the guy's crazy. Like I don't believe anything that actually comes out of Herschel Walker's mouth.
Well, since then, her next statement is we then had another kid that I did have, and which he admitted through this process he had 3 kids before he started running for office. Herschel claimed this many kids. Then he started running for office. And the Daily Beast, which is the same publication that outed him for this abortion, outed him. Oh, by the way, he has 3 other kids he's never claimed publicly. Yeah. And now Herschel said, well, as a matter of fact, I have.
Yes.
So, or as a matter of fact, they are my kids, and now I will claim them. Okay. So after,
but you for and I all agree, of my he's life, in over his head.
Absolutely.
Like okay, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I understand now. I can only imagine what's being said behind closed doors in the Republican Party. Sure. I know it's too close to the finish line for them to throw in another candidate. Mm-hmm. So they're just like, hope he wins. Sure. But what the hell is wrong with this guy? Right. I'm sure that conversation has been had 100 times. Mm-hmm. Going forward, can the Republican Party has always been the party of God and family values. Mm-hmm. Can they keep doing that after Trump and Herschel Walker?
I don't know if party, how do I want to say this? The branding of parties, like if I had you write down, like what is the brand of both parties? I feel like you and I would have a congested list. Yes. I feel like it would be very difficult. So I guess what I'm saying is like, if you would have asked me that 8 years ago, I feel like I would have been like, no, it's a great question. I feel like today, I don't know if the brand of either party matters. I feel like both parties are a little lost in the weeds of what they actually stand to represent for, because both sides have these ends that are just pushing the limits of it. And the rest of us are all kind of looking at them kind of like, I don't know if that's why I started here. Like, I don't know if that's how I ended up.
No, I get it. And maybe it's just because of my lifetime and the generation right before me that I'm educated through. But when you look at the party at the Republicans, of Nixon, of Reagan, of Bush Sr., of even Bush Jr., and then you look at the Democrats, you had Kennedy, who was a playboy, and you had Clinton, who was a playboy. And those were it was the old, sophisticated, this is what a politician's supposed to look like. And this is a little bit of a wild child.
Sure.
And now it has totally, when you look at the family values and you look at from Obama to Trump, Trump, you weren't alive yet then, but his public affairs and the whole Marla Maples thing was huge. And now, and then, I get it. So Trump is the Clinton and Trump are a fascinating debate for a future generation. Who represented family values less, Clinton or Trump?
Sure.
But for a time, this was something that the Democratic Party had the market cornered.
Right.
And then you bring in Trump, and then you bring in Herschel Walker, who's not only had infidelities all over the place and had kids he wasn't claiming, but he's also been violent and threatening and held a gun to his wife and paid for abortions when he claims he's anti-abortion.
I would imagine.
Allegedly.
Yes. This is what I would say. I would imagine if you asked most Democrats and Republicans, is Herschel Walker a representative of what you believe the Republican Party is? Most people that aren't just cheering for their side would be like, probably not. This is not when I would imagine talking to somebody in the party, Herschel Walker would not be the choice I would make.
Then how did we get to a point in America?
Because he scores touchdowns. That's the whole thing.
But shouldn't America be better than that?
That's why, yes, but that's why I said to you, this is, I think this conversation has been way more fascinating than I thought it would be. I give you credit, because I just don't find him interesting.
Himself is not.
To me, Herschel Walker is a result of where we are in America of just don't give me the status quo, because I feel like the status quo has not been working for me. And what's fascinating about that is almost every faction of America now probably in a weird way is saying it in a different way.
See, I think it's more along the lines of, if you agree with me, I will forgive you for all of your evils. And just as long, if you're voting for me, it's good enough. I don't care. I don't care how many people I was going to throw out things, but I don't want to tie to her. I don't care what your past is. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what you're going to do. All I care about is you vote the way I want you to vote.
I think that's true. But here's the thing, when people wake up I hope I'm saying this right. When people wake up in Georgia, they're not going to wake up and say, let me go back check Herschel Walker's history. They're going to wake up and they're like, oh yeah, he has a great smile and he scored a lot of touchdowns. And it's and he's wearing red. So I'll check it out. That's where we're at. I don't know what to tell you. And I just don't find it that fascinating.
So if they come out, I guess this is my question. If your candidate, if you're a Georgia Republican, and your candidate who's been, and he is anti-abortion to the point of everything, rape, incest, mother's life. There is no abortions anywhere. And you find out that he paid for one.
Yes.
And at this point, we know that he's paid for one. If he's had multiple childs out of wedlock, it would not be a stretch to know that he's paid for more.
Correct.
If you find that out a month before the election, when his whole stand is anti-abortion, no exceptions, except when I'm knocking up chicks, now does he become unelectable? Or because he's my party and we need to win, I will elect someone with absolutely no honesty and no moral compass.
I just think you're giving people more credit about what they actually look into when they go to vote sometimes. I don't
No, I'm saying I'm not giving any credit because I don't think they care anymore. And that's why I'm saying, where did that happen?
But in order to care, you have to know.
But everybody knows.
You're giving.
They think they know.
That's what I'm saying.
We'll see what happens the next couple
I think
weeks.
you're giving people the credit of knowing, And I think there's a lot of people that just like, listen, you and I are fortunate. Like we get to come in here and we get to like look this stuff. Like we essentially get the duty of like looking up some of this stuff and trying to have conversations and figuring out where we land. There are a lot of people that when they wake up in the morning, they have no intention or goal or job to figure out if Herschel Walker is a good person that they agree with or not.
But in Georgia, if you're voting for senator, you should have a clue. And
how many people?
This will, for now on, be the show that Jeff said duty.
How many people in the state of Pennsylvania right now do you honestly believe know the background of Shapiro, Mastriano, Fetterman, and Oz?
You can't turn on the news and not hear it.
But
I know them all. I know their voting. I know their tax records. I know where they live. I know how many houses they have.
It's the point I'm trying to make to you is you should know. You have been afforded the opportunity to know. I think there's a majority of Pennsylvanians that when they wake up, it's like,
I get your point. You make a valid point.
How am I getting to work? How am I getting to work on time? Where are my kids? How am I picking up my kids? Like, where do they have to be at 5 o'clock? Like, there is a huge faction of the state that's just not how they're thinking. And so when they show up, like, would I be shocked if they just blind voted for any of those 4 people? Not at all.
I guess this is the next question then. And this comes from a person who's voted on both sides of the aisle because, you know, whoever the best candidate is. Is it, again, have we lost our soul when we're when we're voting for a person that we know is a bad person because he's on our side?
I think what has gotten lost in elections, and some of it is because of the campaigning, some of it is because of the marketing and social media, and it's all like, it's right there for the people who are able to see it. I think part of the problem is people are no longer allowed to vote for what someone represents. They are now voting for the soul of the person that is going to be the representative. So what I mean by that is there was a time where you could go to the ballot and you could vote for somebody because your most important thing was X or your most important thing was party affiliation. And you weren't condemned regardless of what the person you were voting for, their past, their history, nothing else. For some reason, whether it's wokeness, whether it's like progressiveness, whether it's just social media, whatever it is, we have now gotten to a point where I can no longer vote because my main issue is X if the person that represents that did something else or said this.
Well, depending on what they did or depending on what they said.
You're proving my point. You literally just proved my point. Because again, for you to go and vote, what you're essentially saying, if the most important thing, for a lot of people, it's going to be women's rights. It's going to be Roe v. Wade. It's going to be abortion rights. And I get that. Like anybody who goes to the poll and that's your number one thing, I have no issue with you at all. For me personally, it probably isn't my number one thing. Like it's not something that personally has affected me. It's not something that like it happens, like it would be unprojected. It's unprojectable for me if it's going to be. So what I'm saying is like, it matters to me, but it might not be my number one. So if I go to the polls and I vote for somebody that has a different number one objective, but that person has condemned abortion, I can no longer just vote for the representation of something. I'm voting for the soul of that person. And that has shifted. That was not true decades ago.
Well, no, I think I disagree because originally there are 100 issues. There are 1,000 issues. And to go to the poll and say, this is my number one issue, and I'm going to vote for whoever agrees with my number. We're supposed to vote for a person that we
that's
trust
so weird because
and that we think is a good, decent, honest human being that's going to represent us in all places.
Kumbaya.
But that's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay, but
it's not supposed to be a horrible person who agrees with me.
But it isn't. But this is the point I'm making though. Like, there are going to be literally the majority of people on the left side are going to go to the poll and they are going to vote for the thing that is the number one issue to them. And I respect that. I have no issue with it. My issue is that they have a problem with me going to the poll and voting on what I believe is my number one issue. And how they'll turn it against me is they'll say, like, look at the person. And all I'm saying is, like, sometimes the person you vote for, that's not the person. It's about the representative and how they're going to raise their hand when they walk in there.
But
I may not agree with them on everything. I may not agree on the things that you agree with, but they're going to take care of the things that I believe to be true. Sometimes it aligns, sometimes it doesn't. The question is, which side is pointing the finger at the other side and saying, how dare you?
I think the way government is supposed to work is you're supposed to have 100 senators who are honest and fair and balanced. And you're supposed to have 435 representatives.
How many times in history do you think we've had that?
Well, we don't, because we're full of corruption. But it doesn't. We can't say, well, these all 100 senators,
yes,
50 on one side, 50 on the other side, are morally baseless and corrupt. But this one's going to vote my way on this issue, and that's not good.
Why? Isn't that like, I don't understand
what
you're saying. I'm not saying it's good. What I'm saying though is, like, there was a time where I didn't have to align with everything, like all your point of views. And when I went to vote, I had to explain that because the person that I voted for did X. Everybody in history has voted for somebody that has done X. Everybody. I don't care what your voting history. Okay. So this is what I'm saying is, anybody who goes to the polls and votes for the exact opposite person of me, and they're able to say, listen, these are the top 3 things that are the most important to me, and here's number 1, and I think this person's going to do that, then guess what? It's your vote, and you handled your vote the way you wanted to. I'm not going to condemn anybody.
Okay, let me give an analogy. So your kid's going to a high school, and there are 2 people that they're selecting for principal.
Yes.
One person, and you know them both. One person seems a good, wholesome, just like a good-hearted, good person. And the other one is kind of a shady, greedy, like, don't turn your back on him or he'll steal your wallet.
Yep.
But so beyond that, do you care about what subjects this person? Do you care about what his thoughts on music are? Do you care about what his thoughts on sports are? Do you care about any of that? Or do you just figure, this guy's a principal, this guy's a principal, I'd rather have the good one than the shady one, and we'll just go from there?
Okay. So what's your point? Are you implying that every election has a shady person and a not shady person?
I'm saying,
because if that's what you're trying to say, that's not
the goal.
True.
I think we should vote more on the person.
Okay.
And that the person is good and decent and honest, as opposed to the person who's just like, yep, I'm going to vote left every time, or I'm going to vote right every time, because that's not working.
Okay, but that's where we're at.
That's where we're at, but but it's not working, which is why we got to where we're at.
I guess this is the simplest way for me to put it. I'm worried about my vote. I don't worry about yours. Your vote is your vote. So I may have.
I get that.
Okay, so what I'm saying to you is, I may have good conversations with you, and we can sit here and try to find. We do this every day. We come in here Monday through Friday, and we have conversations where sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. We're trying to find the middle, trying to see if we can challenge the other. But at the end of the day, if you go and vote for the exact opposite list of me, I have no problem with it. It's your vote.
No, but you're missing my point. Okay, so let me give you this analogy. This analogy is right in your wheelhouse. So your kid's going to wherever. Your kid's AAU basketball player, and he's choosing between 2 AAU teams.
Yeah.
And you're like, this guy's a good guy. I know him. Yep. This guy's a dirtball. I know him. Which teams your kid play for?
It depends on all the factors.
Well, okay, so now are you looking into?
Do I want to see my team? Do I want my kid to get seen because maybe the other coach knows this coach at this college? Like, who knows? There's 1,000 things.
But at the end of the day, all other things kind of being equal, you don't say, well, I'll give the dirt ball a chance. Do you play man-to-man or zone? Because I'm a man-to-man guy. Or do you play with 4 guards, or do you play with more post? Or what offense do you run? There's a point where at the end of it, when they're dealing with your kid, that you just want your kid to be handled by a good, decent person and not a scoundrel. And it's not like, well, this guy will probably drink and drive on the way home, but at least he'll press for 4 quarters.
But not every election is what you're describing. Like, you're making it sound as if every election in America, there is a clear good choice and there is a clear scoundrel.
No.
But that's the analogies that you are giving.
Okay, but when there's a scoundrel, when there's a guy who's like, he'll show up to the tournaments drunk and he'll do this, but he'll get us in good tournaments and he runs offenses that I like.
So
there's an aspect, you need to find somebody else there.
No,
you need to find somebody other than the drunk.
Yeah. Okay. Somehow that went from being a scout to like just a bad person.
Well, just drunk. Wherever. I'm just trying to make examples.
If they're just a grumpy dude, and like, then okay. Like, I can deal with a grumpy dude. Like, I
say grumpy. I said drunk.
Yes, but not beforehand, because not every candidate is going to be a drunk. That's the point I'm making. Like, you're forming the argument. Like, I don't know how to end this other than this is what I'll say. There is this idea out of all my friends and family There are people that try to convince me who I should vote for. And then there are people that will listen to me and when I go to vote, they have no issue with it. And you would be amazed at how many times the left and liberals have to convince me that I am wrong and that like my vote isn't as good as their vote and you should vote the way I do. And how many times people on the other side, even when I voted against party, never once were they like, well, I can't believe you're doing that. That person over there, they've never done that.
You think the right is more tolerant of the left than the left is tolerant of the right?
No, what I'm saying is the right is more tolerant about the left voting the way that they want to vote than the left is tolerant of the right voting the way that they want to vote. That is what I am saying. To the right, your vote is your vote. To the left, like it's like, how could you do this? Don't you care about your mom? Don't you care about your sister?
Well,
Don't you care about?
Yeah, their vote is their vote, and they're libtards and they're snowflakes and there's. I don't think the right is very like, oh, it's okay to be left.
I'm not saying that it's okay to be left. What I'm saying is like the sanctity of a vote and how much it matters. Like this is again, like you and I always talk about how like
we've kind of got off on it. My
Wait,
point
hold
is
on.
you just can't vote for a bad guy no matter what party he is. If he's a bad guy, he's a bad guy, and he shouldn't get your vote. That's my whole point.
Okay. What I was going to say to you was, you and I talk all the time about how 95% of the time we're aligned. It's just that little 5%. What I'm saying to you is what I think the 5% is here is that there is a thought that if I'm not voting for the thing that you find most important, then I must be voting for this other guy where his soul, like he's just irredeemable scoundrel, everything else. And what I'm saying is I might just have different values than you. I might have different things I'm concerned about. Like it just is what it is. So what's fascinating right now, like the reason, like you always say, like we're so divisive and we're so split right now, there is an issue at the table right now that has been brought up, and rightfully so, with Roe v. Wade and abortion rights. And it's very difficult for a lot of people to understand that that may not be your number one thing when you walk into the polls.
But when I'm talking about Herschel Walker,
really
I don't
hard.
care about. I don't care about Roe v. Wade. My question is, do people what? As I'm choking on my fourth lifesaver, is there a way that Herschel Walker can become unelectable now to the right? Mm-hmm. Is there something that he can do, or any politician can do 4 weeks before that his party says, you know what, he's just a bad guy and we don't want him representing us? And I don't think there is. I think short of murder or rape or child molestation, and I'm not even sure, it depends, because you just need the vote. You just need to win the Senate. And I'm not sure the left is better, but right now Herschel Walker is the poster child for, he seems like an incredible hypocrite, a bad guy, and someone who, as you even said, is over his head, but they have rallied. They are still rallying around him, and he is our guy.
I get it, but you use poster child. Like most Republicans today, when they woke up, do not care about Herschel Walker. That's the thing. Like, that's
oh my God, no! Yes, they do.
No, they don't. They
don't think?
No, they're saying what they need to say because Georgia's an important state.
Because they need the state, because they need the Senate.
But in the grand scale of things, no registered Republican voter actually thinks Herschel Walker is a figure. Like no one thinks Herschel Walker is an important part of the Republican Party, other than the fact that he could win Georgia. That's it. There's no legislation. I understand.
That's what matters.
Yes, but him as a person, as an individual, like no one thinks he's like lighting the world on fire. Like no one thinks that he's like going to come in here and like introduce legislation. He's going to be this thought-provoking person. No one thinks that.
No, but if he wins, he will sway American government.
Yes, but that's what politics is. This is the point
he seems like, for all intents and purposes, a really bad guy.
Yes, I agree. This is the point that I'm making, is that in one breath, I can tell you that I think Herschel Walker is not a great guy, and then separate it and talk about politics. And I think the left has a very hard time doing that.
But
this is a bad example.
It's not my point, but my point is, all my point is in anyone. It doesn't have to be Herschel Walker. Can you get to the point where you are unelectable? Where your moral value system or your hypocrisy or your dishonesty, can it make you to the point that people in Georgia are like, you know what? Republicans in Georgia are going to say, I'm not voting for
but
him.
we knew this 6 years ago when we were picking between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump.
So so what you're saying is no, it's just gone and it's never coming
but
back.
six years ago, our choices were Clinton and
No,
Trump.
I get it.
So the question you're posing to me, I feel like is answered, I guess. I don't know. By the way, I only followed your trail of questions and analogies. I'm not trying to dodge it. I'm just answering what you're putting in front of me.
We have got to a point where we're voting for our color, no matter what the person becomes. And I'm saying that that's where America has lost its soul. That they will vote for, they would vote for Hitler if he was in their party.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's not a citizen, so it wouldn't get the vote. But I was trying to think of who was the murder with the swastika dude on his head that wrote a Beach Boys song?
I don't.
Who was the mass murderer? Not Jeffrey Dahmer. I can't think of his name.
Doesn't matter.
Anyway, but they would vote. Would people vote for Jeffrey Dahmer if he was in their party and he was going to vote and he was going to sway the Senate? And that's what we get to. And I know Herschel Walker's not Jeffrey Dahmer, but it's hard to say I am anti-abortion all across the board, but I paid for at least one. If it comes to be true that he did.
Yeah.
And
there's a clear disconnect here, like a gap, because for me,
Charles Manson, thank you.
You're welcome. There's a huge gap here because to me, I understand whether or not he wins is a big deal. People being like, can you believe he said that? Yes, I can. Can you believe we have somebody in this position that's it? Yes, I can.
Oh, I can too.
Okay.
But so should he still get votes?
He's going to get votes. There's a lot of Mark. No, and there are so many people that should not get votes on both sides. This is what's happening because it's Georgia, because it's abortion, and because it's Herschel Walker. This has blown past what it ever should be. It just is. It's just not. There's 1,000 things that we could talk about that are far more valuable than whether or not what Herschel Walker is saying is real or not. I will tell you right now, it's not. You can't take anything Herschel Walker says at face value right now. So the sooner that people get past that, the sooner we can vote and the sooner we can find out what's going to happen. Because that part of it, this debate of yes, I can believe what's happening. It doesn't shock me at all.
Well, but there's one more step where you said it's because it's Georgia, because it's Herschel Walker, and because of Roe v. Wade, and because the Senate's 50-50. If the Senate was 61-39, this wouldn't even be news. Mm-hmm. No one would really care.
Sure.
I mean, it'd be a little news, but it wouldn't be this big. But he could be the guy. This is the guy who could sway it one way or the other, which is why Republicans behind closed doors are like, I can't believe we backed this guy. Now look at him.
Yes, but again, without looking, we probably need to look up to see if the DCCC funded him anything during his campaign, because that's very, very likely. Okay,
that is touche.
I will happily look it up. I will happily look it up to see. I don't know, but I will look it up. He's one of the few people that I've looked up to see if they did or not. I would also say too, this idea that he's the one. Well, no, there's everybody else that's on that side too that would vote the same thing. He just happens to be the end of it. He just happens to be the one that would sway it. But everybody else has to stay in line too. So to me, he's no more special or different than the other. So again, here's what's happening. It's a media blitz, and rightfully so. He is a bizarre person who's saying things that don't make sense right now. That is a hypocrite. I agree. I don't.
Allegedly.
For me, though, I guess what I'm saying is I don't understand the story, the fascination of can you? Yes, I can believe it. Nothing that's happening right now around Herschel Walker in Georgia surprises me. And I guess what I'm saying is anybody that's it's why are you surprised right now? What is shocking about this?
Oh, and this is the thing. None of my talk is shocked. I'm discussing America's soul and what is.
But it didn't start with Herschel Walker, and it's not going to end with Herschel Walker.
Agreed.
Okay, because we have made choices far before Herschel Walker of whether or not we're selling America's soul.
Well, let me give you.
So everyone, again, I'll say it one more time to beat a dead horse. Everyone painting this picture, people are acting like this is the it moment. And I'm like, dude, were you not here for the last 8 years?
No, and I said he's just the poster child right now for what this is. I'll give another example. With Trump, with the whole Stormy Daniels thing, I could care less. Mm-hmm. And there are aspects of, obviously he'd had public affairs and we knew it. He was on his third wife and blah, 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 and whatever. Whether he had sex with a porn star or not, or paid her or whatever, to me is irrelevant. If a guy who's running for Senate on the anti-abortion in every aspect, yet he has paid for abortions, that's an issue. That's a big deal. Who, whether Kennedy slept with Marilyn Monroe or what Clinton and Monica Lewinsky and Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels and all those things are really irrelevant to the job. But if he's adamant one way and in his personal life he's another way, now that's not even a little hypocritical. That is the definition of hypocritical. I can't say it. And that's a problem.
So just 10, I always say 10 seconds, and then you take 60. In 10 seconds, just summate, like, what is your main, like, after these past 25 minutes, what is your main gist of, because this is
there anything someone can do to become unelectable?
Because I feel like you gave analogies, I responded to them, you asked questions, I responded to them, and then somehow you acted as if I was trying to dodge the initial question.
No, and I've said this, I've scattered this throughout. Okay. What does someone have to do to become unelectable? Or if he's in your party, are you just voting for him blindly?
To become unelectable in 2022, 2024, you have to switch sides. That's how you become. That's how you become unelectable.
You're probably right.
You have to. We saw it with Liz Cheney. Well, Liz Cheney didn't switch sides, but she held her ground. She held her ground.
No, that's probably good. You're probably right.
You have to hold your ground or switch sides. But like this, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't know if I'm right, but it would just be the simplest way to get people to basically say, like, you're out.
I'm with you.
Hold your ground. Don't switch sides.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Go ahead and say something nice about the Genetti. It would be the first nice thing that was said on here for the last.
No, I think that was intelligent.
It was.
Whether other people think so or not is the question. The Genetti. I didn't mention the Genetti's pet friendly. So if you have people traveling and over the holidays and stuff, yes, it is pet friendly. So and it has been for, I'm going to say 100 years because it's 100 years old. That might be an exception. But when you talk to the general managers and stuff, they're like, we have very, very few problems. But so if people that want to travel or refuse to travel over the holidays because they don't want to kennel their pets or whatever, they can bring them. And the Genetti's pet friendly. That's now, awesome. I'm sure you can't bring like what was the one that we saw the other day? A kangaroo?
Yeah,
the guy online. I don't think you can put a crocodile in the tub.
No.
But you can bring your dog, your cat. The Genetti's pet friend.
Crocodile in the tub. I wanted to talk to you about this. We flirted with it and brought it up a couple of times. Chess investigation. It has now come to light, and we'll backtrack here in a second, but it has now come to light that the U.S. Grandmaster likely cheated more than 100 times. An internal report reviewed by the Wall Street Journal alleges a previously unknown pattern of likely widespread cheating by Hans Niemann, the player whose September victory over Magnus Carlsen has rocked the chess world. When world chess champion Magnus Carlsen last month suggested that American Grandmaster Hans Niemann was a cheater, the 90-year-old Niemann launched an impassioned defense. What did he offer to do?
He'd play naked.
He said that he would play naked in a crowded room. I forget what it was.
It was more elaborate than that.
Yes,
but he said
he would play naked in a room around everybody so they could see he wasn't cheating. Niemann said he had cheated, but only at 2 points in his life, describing them as youthful indiscretions committed when he was 12 and 16 years old. Now, however, an investigation in Niemann's play conducted by Chess.com, which is where he was originally booted from, an online platform where many top players compete, they have found that the scope of his cheating to be far wider and longer lasting than he publicly admitted. So here's the catch before you and I have this conversation is they found that he has cheated all 100 times. However, all 100 times have been online at this chess.com.
Right.
And they were all before he became like a grandmaster, before he was playing and like
building his way up. So a lot of different things here. There were first, let's do this. Can we talk about Magnus Carlsen real quick? And I'll just pose a couple of questions to you. Magnus Carlsen, who is on your screen, was the grandmaster. He lost. When he lost, he resigned from the tournament. He refused to keep playing, which is like unheard of for grandmasters. I think it has something to do with like the subtlety of chess. It's kind of like golf and tennis where there's like all these unwritten rules, but also too, there's like a score thing to it as well. Yes. And like, so walking away does not help, obviously. He then like subtweeted, he sent like a weird image basically implying that like
The reason I did it is because it was unfair. Like something's going on in the background that nobody knows about. And so I wasn't just being a crybaby. Like there's something else going on here. A couple of weeks later, he resigns from a tournament before he's supposed to play this kid again. So this is twice now.
I think Van Pelt said he made one move and then got up and left.
So this is twice now where he has gotten up and essentially like left a tournament. One time while at the table, another time after he was done at the table, which again is unheard of for anybody, let alone who is considered the best chess player, chess mover,
chess player.
I feel like they could be movers because aren't you moving?
They could be.
The best chess
they
player.
Could be?
What's that?
Shakers.
They could be shakers.
They could be movers and shakers.
Oh my gosh. So my question for you is, when you look at these two pictures, my first thought, not being a chess fan, if you wrote a movie and you were casting these two parts, you can't do better than those two people.
No, I'm with you.
You cannot. The one guy who is being accused of cheating is kind of like a younger, I'm not going to question Neiman's hygiene, but you can tell like he looks like a roll out of bed college student American, while the other player is cut, primped, like he is ready to go, suit coat, everything going on. Is there any part of this where you think Magnus has kind of hurt himself a little bit?
No.
He has made it easier to root for Neiman than what it probably would have been.
No, I don't think, because I think he's
You don't think so?
I think all his colleagues will defend him, and I think he's brought publicity to the sport.
Interesting.
Because he called the guy out. Like if he wouldn't have had the guts to. So no, I think he is. I think it's good.
You think most people stand behind him? You think like the average person?
The guy who walked off?
Yes.
Yes, I think so.
Interesting. So you think he cheated?
The kid?
Yes.
I don't see how. And they showed a thing, and this was probably on Van Pelt too. They do it with multiple screens.
Okay.
So they see the move, and then they do something over here, and the computer tells them what to move, and then they move. Because it's not rapid fire. It's not like speed chess.
Sure.
They have a certain amount of time. So, yeah, and there's a term for it. Like obviously, he's not the first guy that's done it, and it's so.
But
yeah, I think.
But we should mention like they have not caught him at a live tournament cheating.
Well, they thought they figured out a way. Yeah, I don't know. They're in the technology of the world. They have to be able to put him in a lead-based room or whatever, where no signals get in and they're just watching, and they have to be able to do it. Put him in a desert where there's no cell signal, and just him and the guy playing. And you would think, no cameras, no nothing. Nobody can see over your shoulder. Nobody can help you. It's just you and him and a judge, and let's go. They have to be. It's not that hard.
Do you think that there's a chance, and I only saw this written in one other place, there is a chance that he is now like a classically trained chess player, which is weird to say classically when they were trained in like the 90s, but a classically trained chess player. You would play against the computer, but you weren't really like the computer wasn't elevated yet. Like you knew you could get to a point where you knew what the computer was going to do. These newer chess players now, they are training against computers all the time. And these computers are now like 8 moves ahead, 9 moves ahead, 10 moves ahead. Whereas before they were 3-4 moves ahead. So what's happening is you see these computers and they're doing things that make no sense to grandmasters. Like grandmasters are like, this makes no sense. It doesn't. Is there a chance that this younger group that's going to come through, they are now going to do and see things that just older classical chess masters are not going to be able to comprehend?
It's not like this guy's old.
But he, in the world of chess, though,
but he's played against computers, I'm sure.
But I think you're missing the point, though, because that's what I was saying. His what he grew up playing against is not what these kids are growing up and playing against.
No, but I'm sure what they did was studied. Like the computer tells you on a probability scale what's the best move to make next.
Sure.
And out of every 100 moves, how the great players, how many times they make the move that the computer says.
Sure.
And it's probably, 75% or 85% or whatever. If this kid made the same move that the computer said 100% of the time over and over and over and over as they replayed these matches, and nobody else is above 85% or 7. You know, if you tell the kids to go down to the lunch at cafeteria and go shoot 100 free throws and tell me how many you made, and some kid comes back and says I made 99, you're like, you're a liar.
But this isn't some kid. This is like a
He's a 19-year-old kid.
Yes, but he's a chess master.
Because
like,
has he cheated his way to be a chess master?
So let me just understand this. Because otherwise this conversation is stupid. You think that Hans Niemann is not actually a chess master regardless.
I think he's good.
Okay, so I think Hans Niemann is a chess master regardless. Do we agree with that statement?
I think he's a better chess player than everybody else we know.
So you think he's a chess master?
Is he like top 100 in the world?
Sure.
Is he top 500 in the
he's
world?
A chess master.
But is he top 10 in the world or top 50?
Okay,
like, that's the debate.
But yes, but in your analogy, what I'm saying is, like, if you sent the 50th best basketball player who shot like 79% from the free throw line, and he comes back and tells you he made 99, like, you would be like,
you're still lying.
You would be like, but you would be like, it must have been a good day.
No,
you don't think there's
99 out of 100? No way. Steph Curry's not making 99.
I think I'm on the other end of this, because what's going to happen, and it has to happen, you're going to get these teenagers and 20-year-olds that all they've done is play against these computers that far exceed what these other people played against when they were kids and teenagers. And so what's going to happen is, like, there's an innateness to this stuff. You know this in any sport, in any game, in any athletic. There's a feeling and an innateness that you can't explain. Like, you'll be like, why did you do that? And you'll just be like, I don't know, like, I saw it and I just kind of felt it. And you're telling me that you don't think, coming up through this crop of the next chess generation, that there are going to be kids that see something 9 moves ahead, they do it, and a grand chess master is going to be like, what is that? And their only explanation is going to be, a computer must have told them to do that.
Maybe.
Because that's what this feels like to me.
But they could still check. And they could obviously go back, because they've examined 100 games. So they did some sort of examining, and they've caught him cheating twice.
I agree.
So there's,
by the way, no, 100 times. It's 100 times.
Well, no, he admitted to it twice before when he was young. Now they've caught him 100 times.
But they were all when he was on chess.com.
So could there be a kid that is just that good, the redheaded chick, that's just that good because yes, but it's not this kid. He has proven it.
Let me ask you this. In a lot of the games, because you and I have talked about cheating a lot lately because of the phishing scandal and stuff like that, I think to cheat, you still have to be good at what you're doing.
If he was playing you and I, he'd beat us in 10 moves.
That's what I'm saying is, when there was just the phishing scandal, okay, what are you looking for?
I'm just making sure I check.
I gotta
get going
during the
I'm
phishing
just getting ready to go.
During the phishing scandal, you still had to catch the fish. Like, you can't cheat if you don't catch big enough fish.
Correct.
To then stick the fillets and the weights into.
Correct.
Okay. If you're this kid, doesn't it say something that he's able to cheat and manipulate all this way through his teens? Why is it so hard to believe that didn't actually make him a better player at the end of the day? Because he is trying to think, what is the best way to win? What is the best way to play this? While other people might not even be thinking about those things. So I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm okay with him cheating, but what I'm saying is, like, there's this idea of, like, well, because he's cheating, he just can't be. And I'm, like, looking at it like, are we sure? Because in order to see some of this stuff,
I think they're sure.
Okay.
They found 100 games.
I think there's a lot of pettiness. There's a lot of, like, I can't believe this.
So you think he's just really good and they're just jealous?
I think that every once in a while, you can strike lightning by throwing somebody off guard. And I have very little doubt that if you played Hans Niemann, he is doing some things that, like, don't make. By the way, he's gotten crushed in some of these tournaments, right? And people are like, it's because he couldn't cheat. Maybe it's just because he's an absurd player who doesn't follow the rhythms of a normal chess game. And sometimes it works.
So then the other question would be, how many times does this guy get crushed? Because the other guy that walked out.
Magnus?
Like, do the great ones ever get crushed? Because Usain Bolt never goes to a 100-meter dash and takes last.
It's different because you're running a straight line.
I get
it's just
it,
a different analogy.
There's still the Michael Jordan never went out and averaged 12 points a game because he was just, the great ones are always great. I wonder how many of the best chess players in the world go out and lose in the first round.
But like, if you go through and you look at the list of players that have scored 50 points in a game, you'd be shocked at the name of players who scored 50 points in a game.
Yeah, but
so this is the point I'm making, is like, you're telling me that a chess master every once in a while, because he's playing this kind of like fluky, unorthodox style, because of the way that they've been brought up and the way he's seen the board, and because he has cheated in the past, you don't think it's unreasonable that he threw this guy for a loop? And here's the other thing too.
But he had to get he got all the way through the tournament. He didn't throw one guy for a loop. He beat all these guys who were better than him.
I get that. But here's the other thing too. You and I go to play a game, and someone says to you before the game, hey, this dude, he's cheated. Like, he cheats all the time. Watch him. Now Hans Niemann sits down at the table.
You're crazy.
You're telling me that people are actually on top of their game. You're telling me that in the back of their recesses of their mind, they're not like, they aren't thrown off.
I'm telling you, we don't know enough about professional chess to know this, but there would be.
When people sit down at a table with Hans Niemann, do you think they're 100% there? I'm willing to wager.
I don't know if they are. I think they just kicked his ass anyway. As you said, he wasn't that good, and he lost a lot. I mean, he was good, but he wasn't that good. He was a marginal big leaguer.
I'm blown away that you are like so.
No, he cheated.
You're so sure that he cheated
and he got caught.
It's wild. Say one more thing and then we'll go.
Thank you to Weis Markets.
That was good.
For sponsoring and gas rewards. They are big and they're almost in Townsville. It's almost done. It's funny watching a gas station go up from nothing. It was part of the parking lot, and they kind of broke it in. They built it, and you got to bring the tanks in and all that stuff. And it's kind of a fascinating thing because like gas stations are just there.
Yeah.
And then this is going in a parking lot. But
you know what needs a gas station? Downtown Williamsport needs a gas station.
It
needs something.
It's going to be nice.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. And thank you to Weis for being our title sponsor. Mark has to run. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina, and we will see you